on it, and they had the Warriors playing.
Yeah,
and it was all going on at once, and I had no way to record any of it, where I normally do, because one of our afternoon person was filling in screwed up technically, and we tried to fix it, we couldn't. So I had to go to plan B, which worked, but it was a pain in the rear, for the first. I just kind of kept my calm. So I think we talked to Rich mostly about the NFL, and here's an idea. And talk about. I think it'd be fun to talk with him about his experiences. He worked as the 49er pre- and post-game show host and sideline reporter for many, many years in the 1980s and 90s.
Okay.
So some good stories there about those teams. But also, I know he wants to talk about the here and now because he keeps up with it.
Sure.
But I hate to bring this up, but I really think we should talk about the future of the NFL with regards to CTE and what's going on, and also how much is kneeling thing has created a lot of noise. I don't think it's really been that damaging in the long run, but it's hurting the league financially. So I'm curious to get
his
take on that. Yeah.
I got a couple things.
Yeah. We can move around. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we got the nice thing is we got almost an hour as usual.
Yep. 847-2200.
There you go. And he'll be good. He'll be excellent.
Yeah.
I'm having to get up at 3 in the morning.
Hello. Would this be Mr. Walcoff?
Edward, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you?
What's going on, Rich?
Oh, not much. I got my fireplace cranking on that rainy, cold morning here in Cortez.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it right there yet?
It was early in the morning now. It's just gray.
Yeah.
Looks like wanted,
Supposed to hit later this afternoon. You guys are supposed to really get pounded up here too in Marin, yeah.
So I hear it. Yeah. But that's what we need, right?
Yep, I get to go to San Francisco later on.
Oh, well, just don't go in. Yeah, you'll be right. You'll just take it slow. It's all good.
All right, my friends. Let's go get this bad boy started.
Okay.
Sure.
All right.
Here we
go.
Intro.
Listening to Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Bruce McGowan, longtime sports radio personality. Now, today, we're going to have a guest on who we've had on before. He's always fun. Who is it?
It's a longtime sportscaster, worked with KGO Radio, the top-rated radio station in San Francisco for many, many years. Sports announcer, he also did the 49ers sidelines and pre- and post-game shows for a number of years. My good friend, Rich Walcoff, and we're going to talk some NFL and talk about the current today and what's happening. But also, I'd like to get some thoughts from Rich, who got to be around during the glory years, and also maybe you had some thoughts that you want to throw out there about football.
Well, he must be excited because they're on a one-game winning streak.
That's right. They finally won a game. But on a serious note, maybe we can get some read on what's going on with this brain injury thing, the CTE, and how that's affecting the long-term future of the league.
Also wanted to bring up Jerry Jones threatening to move the Cowboys to Canada.
Oh, God. Jerry Jones is nuts. He really is.
First,
he's a sideshow.
He kneels, then he doesn't kneel, and then he kneels.
Yeah, he's a sideshow and a sideshow. So anyway.
All right. When we come back, we're going to have Rich Walcoff on. And this segment of Sports Econ 101 is sponsored by Pacific Private Money, still providing mortgage investments that are currently yielding over 7.5% secured by real estate. It doesn't get any more conservative than that. The average loan value is only 56% in their fund. And by the way, for people who can't qualify for the fund, because you have to be an accredited investor, you have to have a net worth at home.
Wow.
Or you have to make $200,000 a year individually, or $300,000.
I guess that keeps me out.
I keep all of us out. However,
but not that far off, though.
Okay, well, however, though, they do have a new website called privatemoneyloans.com. So for those people who can't qualify under the fund, under those accredited investors, they can buy existing loans that are still currently yielding about 7%.
Interesting.
And they can be, rather than in a fund, they can be in the specific deal themselves. So,
is it true that business in America is business?
Versus?
No, I was just asking.
Okay. All right, stay with us. More Econ 101 will be right back.
All right, Rich. Thanks for hanging in there. We're going to get started.
Save the file here, and then we're ready to go.
How's Chris doing this morning?
She's at CrossFit.
Good.
Oh, I did that last night with Eva, with some friends. My shoulder's killing me.
I'm going a nice hike out at the bird sanctuary. It's not really a hike; it's more like a 2-mile walk by the bay here, right? As we've done here with my buddy Herman. Yeah, we go out there all the time when it's you know, we don't have a lot of time. It's just a little hour and a half, and it's nice. We can
Cool.
yeah talk each other's troubles. He's had like, well, you talk about a guy who's been through it. He lost both of his all three of his siblings in about a 4-year period. His sister, he's my age, he's 65, but he lost his older brother and his 2 sisters all within a 4-year period. And they're all older than him. Cancer.
Don't talk about that now.
Well, no, it's just reality. I mean, I'm losing my mom. She could go any moment. I lost my dog a couple weeks ago. You know, it's just part of life. You got to move on. My wife's got cancer. She's living a good life. But you got to move on. You got to just keep walking straight. And
haven't found a cure for old age yet. So.
The way to stop old age is do what Rich is doing, you're doing, and I'm doing, is keep moving.
That's it.
Keep moving, keep stretching, and get outdoors and eat healthy. That's the key. Yeah, have a good time.
Keep the stress down and keep productive.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, here we go, guys.
All right.
Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McAllen. Bruce, who's on the phone?
Well, we got Rich Walcoff, longtime friend and colleague, and we mentioned that those that weren't listening that Rich worked for many, many years, over 3 decades, with KGO Radio in San Francisco, which is at the time was the #1 radio station in the Bay Area, and they were the flagship station of the 49ers during most of their great and glorious era. And Steve Young, which lasted the better part of 2 decades. You know, Rich, Edward and I have a number of things we want to get into, but I got to, you know, I'm an historian, and I got to cover those teams as you did. You were covering them more closely. Like covering the 49ers during their heyday, when players didn't move around so much, and you had this aura of invincibility at Candlestick Park.
Well, it was pretty epic and historic, as you point out, Bruce, because so many guys were extraordinary in their gifts as football players, but also, not coincidentally, tremendous people. I don't think it's any coincidence that Bill Walsh created this tremendous legacy with the likes of Lott and Rice and on, with so many high-quality guys. So the locker room was uniquely bonded, and Bill created this group of intermediaries between the coaching staff and the roster, who were kind of his link to the team. And they would tell him if he was pushing too far or if they needed more of this or that. It was very integrated in the way the organization was running, and you know, was the epitome of what success is all about. The team didn't have say in play calling and obviously personnel moves, but they were integrally involved in how they were preparing. And Bill Walsh, a Praetorian historian, if you will, too, was harkening back to in great military sense and brought that into his coaching style.
You know, Rich, it's interesting you mentioned that because just coincidentally last night I went to a men's group meeting, and one of the guys was saying that he had heard a speech from a guy who was a Navy SEAL, and he said that the way that they conquered fear was the love that they had within the unit for each other, that each one of those guys would have fallen on a grenade for the other. And that conquered the fear, because otherwise the fear will just take you over. So I can kind of imagine, same thing in the locker room, if you have complete, you know, respect and honor for your teammates, you're going to have their back. And
yeah, and I've noticed it also with the Warriors, with the Golden State Warriors, with Steve Kerr, who has really a well-educated background. He lived abroad. He has helped to bring back the international style play to the NBA. And again, I think this all comes down to people, the quality of people. It's no coincidence, even though Bill Belichick is a curmudgeon, he surrounds himself with pretty good people and also with smart people that are well. And I think that's a key you see in San Antonio with Greg Popovich's team. It's a key with all successful teams. The Yankees had a system that worked well for many years. The Dodgers have had a system that has worked well for many years. The Lakers in the 1980s and before that, and during the Jerry West era. So, you know, there's a common theme there.
almost with the Dodgers. They keep just running just short.
But they're always there, with the rare exception, and they're at least a contender with rare exception.
Yeah.
But Rich, we were talking, Edward and I, just briefly about the NFL. It's just my opinion, and I'm not sure if a lot of other people share this. I don't think this whole thing about the kneeling for protest of police violence by African American players and some Caucasian players is the main problem that is hurting the NFL. I think it has been for a number of years now since the revelations came out. The brain injury thing. I mean, that to me is going to steer a lot of parents into sports that are safer. And as Harry Edwards was pointing out, the great sociologist and former sports activist who worked with the 49ers, and you know Harry quite well, that the kids from the disadvantaged homes and the homes that are really on the edges of dire poverty are going to be the kids that look to football as a way out. And as a result of that, there are going to be fewer and fewer of the mainstream fans that are going to identify with the NFL. I mean,
let me add one thing to that, because there's also the part about how us fans look at the players as gladiators,
right?
And they've done so much to protect players. Average fan, wants to see blood and guts. Remember Y.A. Tittle with the blood streaming down?
Well, that's been part of That's the part of the appeal, the big hit, the great open field, spear of a guy hitting another guy and knocking him out. I remember George Atkinson knocking out Winslow. I mean, Rich, you covered football closely. You were on the sidelines. You get swept up in all that. But do you think fans are kind of getting turned off when they hear these stories about long-term health effects, and especially the ones who have kids that are growing up that want to play the sport?
Well, I don't know if it's turning off fans from viewing or attending, but it's certainly impacting the amount of kids playing Pop Warner football and pursuing a career beyond that, as high school and college programs struggle to maintain even the bare minimum or keep programs afloat. Ironically, I just did a long-form interview with Chris Moreland yesterday, the 49er linebacker who quit the NFL after his rookie season, where he was one of the best rookies in the league, over concerns about CTE. And a very erudite, intelligent young man, 24 years old, walked away from millions of dollars, fame, glory, and all that he loved because of his concerns that he would not be a fully functioning adult if he continued to play. He calls the game intrinsically, inherently dangerous. And Roger Goodell has recently come out with a quote that football has never been safer. And Borland and I agree that that's the most disingenuous comment he's ever made, because players are bigger, stronger, faster, the pure physics of it. And although the NFL is trying to temper the danger with taking away the hits on defenseless players and protecting quarterbacks, is the violent nature of the game without eliminating the game. And that's the Harry Edwards comment. He said to me, watching practice a few years ago, that the NFL in 5 years will be 90+% African American. Because of the comment of the sentiment that you just expressed, Bruce, is that only the parents of the underclass will risk the health of their kids, because in some ways it's more dangerous on the streets of the inner city in America than it would be on the football field, and at least you have your chance of glory, whereas if you never pursued it, you wouldn't, and you could elevate an entire family or group of people if you succeed. And more with other options and available to their kids, will tell their sons, no, that's not something.
Well, and does that mean that we will see more white players playing basketball?
Well, I don't think quid pro quo in that respect. Well, you are seeing more European.
True. I was just thinking that, okay, so if I'm a parent and I've got, and I'm white and I have kids who I'm concerned about the danger in football, I'm going to push them to another sport. So it could be baseball, basketball, soccer.
Basketball,
yeah.
Any number of things.
Yep.
So I don't think you could say race storyline as much as socioeconomic.
Mm-hmm.
So, and in this case, we do find a higher percentage of impoverished minority living in the inner city, chances to play football is a way out, if you will, versus middle class, urban, often Anglo-Americans might say, hey, not my kid, too risky, go play tennis, go play
yeah, sure. All right, hey, Rich, stay with us. We are going to cut to a first commercial break here. Talk the theme for trivia questions is football.
Oh, there you go.
Right, and
cool.
Rich, you remember, if you know the answer, don't say anything until we get back. All right. First trivia question. Throughout the entire 20th century, there was only one NFL player who played in 20 seasons for the same team. Who was that loyal trivia question? Email Edward at sportsecon101.com. The answer to that question, don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back.
All right.
Morton Anderson.
Ah.
You're, no, I was to say, you waited until after the break.
I was going to say one of the guy, Clay Matthews' dad, I think played with Houston.
Not Bruce. Who was the other guy? There's
was
Bruce and there's...
Yeah.
I thought it was the kicker. I thought
Well, you're probably right, because Morton Anderson, I think, spent most of his career with the Saints, didn't he?
Went to the Falcons.
And then he went to the Falcons. And another guy, who played the longest was George Blanda, but George Blanda didn't play his entire career with the Raiders.
26 years.
26 years, yeah. He played with the Bears, the Houston Oilers, the AFL, and the Raiders of the AFL, NFL. So, yeah, we'll have some fun with this one. We'll figure it out. I bet you it's,
By the way, Chris Borland had two brothers. One in Iraq and one in West Point.
Wow.
He was very animated about the protests on the field, saying that his brothers supported him and the players.
Interesting. Where is he from?
He's from Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
Went to Wisconsin. He was a teammate of Russell Wilson.
Wow. Well, let's talk a little bit about him again when we have a chance. But right now we got the thing, and then you go ahead with your question. I don't think
Here we go.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Edward Brown here along with Bruce McGowan. First trivia question. Throughout the entire 20th century, there was only one NFL player who played in 20 seasons for the same team. Who was that loyal player?
Rich, you want to take a stab at that one?
Well, I thought it was kicker Morton Anderson of the Saints.
That's what I would have guessed.
And I was thinking of a lineman, Matthews, Clay Matthews. There's Clay Matthews. There's Bruce Matthews, who played with Houston. And then I thought of George Blanda, but George Blanda played with the Bears. He played 26 years in the NFL. Played with the Bears in the NFL. For George Hallis, played with the Houston Oilers and then the Oakland Raiders. So it wasn't him.
It wasn't any of those guys, but he was an offensive tackle.
Yeah.
He played for the Rams.
Oh, wait a minute. I know what you mean.
Not Jackie Slater.
Yes, Jackie Slater.
Jackie Slater.
From 1976 to
Whoa,
1995.
I hope he's doing okay. Boy, those offensive linemen get a beating. It's interesting. We got Rich Walcoff for a long-time sports announcer from the Bay Area with us. And Rich, offensive linemen take a fierce beating, but in terms of, these open field collisions head-to-head, you don't see that many offensive linemen concussed like you do, say, linebackers or wide receivers or running backs. There's more places to hit an offensive lineman. I remember Lincoln Kennedy, the big 6'9", 320-pound Raider tackle. I used to see him after the games, and I'd say, "Lincoln, are you okay?" And he goes, "I'm just hurting all over, man." But it just seems to me, if you're talking about Chris Borland, the guy who would, the linebackers have to have that kind of kamikaze mentality, don't they?
Yeah, it's like a missile projectile throwing his body in harm's way all the time. Endemic to the nature of the position of the sport. But beyond the head-to-head hits, which get, I think, too much attention over the underlying physics of contact, when the brain is sloshing in the cavity of the skull, any contact, shoulder, chest, is going to engender that kind of movement, which is what's triggering CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is such a damning indictment on the nature of the sport, which is the NFL in harm's way, literally.
Yeah, it's too bad, too, because I think, as we talked about earlier, and not to say negative here, but violence is an inherent part of the human condition. And also, if you look at the history of our nation, how many wars we've been involved with, football is kind of almost an extension of that. I mean, where Al Davis, and you talked about it earlier, Bill Walsh, they would bring up, famous generals and battles and so on as examples to kind of stir their players. The game is only one event, so it is kind of, once a week, so it is kind of like, and you almost have to have that mentality. You do have to have that mentality to succeed, I think, in football. I mean,
well, look, it's all about gaining territory, marching into your opponent's turf, gain the access to the holy grail, the end zone, and you outflank your opposition. you try to maneuver around this, that, or the other. Well, obviously, because the parallels are tremendous, and the NFL is trying to capitalize that with all the pageantry of flags and this recent alliance with the Defense Department and Pentagon to herald all that stuff, playing up the patriotic themes and the like, which, that's a whole nother storyline. But there's no question about it. It is a battlefield. The only difference between war and football is there are survivors in football, at least in the short term. In the long term, it's tremendously debilitating, and its future is very murky. The revelations of the health risk.
I wonder, a guy like Jack Lambert, who is just a beast out there, how he's doing, or Dick Butkus.
They're not well, most of them. In fact, the Pittsburgh Steelers, notorious steroid users in the 70s in the Steelers defense, so many of them were afflicted with either early death, Alzheimer's, depression, suicide. I mean, horrible, horrible consequences of playing the game at a time when the illegal hits were few and the abuse of the drugs, the performance enhancing drugs specifically, was rampant.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned some of those names. Ray Mansfield is the one that comes most prominently to mind, the offensive lineman who later died as a result of the CTE and was used by that doctor. I can't remember his name, Benjamin Amalu, I believe his name was, who studied him and came up with this, not a theory, but a results, which he presented to the NFL, much to their chagrin and their horror. And, ever since then, that was, 4 or 5 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago?
Mike Webster, right?
What was it, Mike Webster?
Mike Webster.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of Ray Mansfield there. The offensive line, that's the problem with them. They're so anonymous. But, yeah, Mike Webster, very good. The center, who was right in the middle, Jim Otto, who we both know, and all three of us know. I know Jim personally pretty well. He is just turning 80, and he's had, I think, in the neighborhood of 75 operations. His brain seems to be in pretty good shape, amazingly, but his body is just, he's got one leg, he's got a couple of shoulders that have been replaced. At one time I went on his Facebook page and he was quoting some psalm from, he's a very, very, very strong religious guy, quoting some psalm from the Bible as if he were about to die. But Jim is just an amazing, if he was in the war, he'd be the last guy down.
I mean, I'm thinking, a center, unless you're going against Deacon Jones with the head slap, well, I guess they do.
Well, they're right in the middle. They're right in the middle of everything. Every single play.
The pass rushers are on the edge.
Yeah.
In the middle. But Otto is such an extraordinary exception to the prevailing hard head. So many guys suffer. I mean, when the Boston University School of Medicine examined the brains of 111 former NFL players posthumously, and 110 of them had evidence of CTE. That isn't the most damning thing. And it's Steve Fanaru and Mark Fanaru-Watta's book, League of Denial, where the NFL has been in absolute running roughshod over evidence and obfuscating it and doing all they can to quell concern and draw. I mean, they're making claims that there's no connection between one concussion and the likelihood of getting others, or denying medical benefits from symptoms they believe are related to the injuries they suffered in football, whether it be depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, and all the other things that we chronicled well noted in the recent years. The NFL has been abominably malfeasant in this regard, and I think it's going to come home to roost. But they're protecting their $12 billion annual business.
Well, you know what's kind of crazy though is that if you were to ask players, or people, or just ask potential players, listen, here's the deal: you'll be a starting player, but there's a high likelihood you'll get the CTE. I mean, 75% or more will probably still do it.
Sure. Well, it's like boxers.
I walked around the NFL. I walked around the 49er locker room about 4 years ago and asked guys when the CTE revelations were first being known, and you're right, Edward. Yeah. Most players said we know the risk coming in, although they didn't truly, and we're willing to accept that. Or was there a study? Not a study, but a proposition that Sports Illustrated made to a bunch of NFL players a number of years ago. They said if you could take a pill,
it was the Olympians. They said, it was the Olympians. They said if we could give you a pill, and you'd be guaranteed to get a gold medal 5 years because of that pill. 95% of them said they'd still take the pill.
That's the young athletes, so they're thinking of the here and the now. Maybe is that part of it, Rich? You think that they're just...
Yeah, well, Chris Marlin was telling me yesterday, you're so ingrained with the all-consuming love of the game. So ever since you're 10, 11 years old, when you are an aspiring star player, it's all-consuming. And there is great gratification and camaraderie, the competition, the glory, the fanfare, the adulation.
Yeah. And don't forget the money, right? Because how many of these guys are going to be able to make that kind of money outside of football?
Well, but also recognize that 20, 30 years ago, these guys had a moonlight and work in the office.
Yeah.
So the big money only came recently, and it only comes to a handful of players on the 53-man roster. Not to say that a $300,000 or $400,000 salary is something to scoff at, but for a football player is only 3.5 years. We all know how, and no contracts are guaranteed. Yeah, but that's not what fuels most of these guys initially. It's the love of the game and all that goes with it. But now they're at cross purposes because of the revelations that are coming to light. So I think football is facing a very serious crisis.
I think it's unfortunately going to die probably a long, slow, painful death. It'll take a long time, though, because pro football's been around since 1920. The game has been extremely popular in this country since '58, that famous Baltimore, New York overtime championship game. And it's going to take a while. It's ingrained. It's a big part of our culture.
And especially if you start getting more exciting Super Bowl. There was a time when the Super Bowl was getting kind of boring for whatever,
we've had some amazing games.
Yeah.
The last one was probably the best of all, with Brady coming back from a 28-3 deficit against the Falcons. That was incredible.
All right, guys.
Boxing is still here, and football will probably still survive. It's just not going to be king of the hill.
Boxing's a little different because it's one-on-one, So
but it's just as dangerous.
Oh, absolutely.
More so.
But I mean, it's just there's one thing to get 60 players on a situation. Anyway, hey guys, stay with us. We're going to cut to a break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit about Jerry Jones and the Falcons, and our favorite Vice President Pence. And I want to talk a little bit about that from an economic standpoint.
Sure.
Okay. So here's our second trivia question. Again, we're talking football. Which running back set an NFL record for scoring 40 points in one game?
Ooh.
All right, that's our trivia question. Don't touch that dial. Sports Econ 101. I'll be right back.
Okay. 40 points in one game.
Can I answer now?
Wait, spring your answer.
Yeah, spring. Yeah,
I'm
supplies.
Dragging.
Gail Sayers had touchdown in the game, but that.
Gail Sayers, that's right. That was against the 49ers. I remember listening to that on the radio as I was going hiking in the rain. We're driving up Nottingham, and I'm listening to this game, and Lon Simmons is just—I can't believe what. And it was a cold, rainy, muddy day at Wrigley Field, and I think the final score was something like Soldier. No, they played at Wrigley Field in those days. This is before they moved to Soldier Field. This is 1966. The Bears used to play games at Wrigley Field up until about, I think it was 68 or 70.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, that's our next trivia question.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. One more time, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Second trivia question: which running back set an NFL record for scoring 40 points in one game?
Let's let our guest Rich Walcoff take a stab at that one.
I was going to go with Gale Sayers.
So was I.
He had a big touchdown against the 49ers back in his heyday, but that would only add up to 36 points.
Yeah.
And I don't think he was kicking PATs.
No, he wasn't. No, he wasn't.
So you have to go back. We have to go back before Gale Sayers.
Yeah, I was going to say go back to the 1940s to somebody
Even
who was
earlier.
Also the 20s.
Yes.
George Hallis?
No.
No, not George Hallis, but George.
In 1929.
Ernie Nevers.
Yes,
Ernie Nevers.
Nevers.
Who, by the way, interesting story. Ernie Nevers, Stanford, would play with the Duluth Eskimos. An interesting story about Ernie Nevers. I grew up in a community where Ernie Nevers lived during his retirement. So we used to have Little League dinners, and he would show up.
Oh.
Wonderful man. And he had white hair, and he was a big, husky guy and friendly. And this guy was in his 70s by then, but he was Ernie Nevers was one of the legends of the NFL back in the 1920s and I think early 30s. Great college football.
That's when college started like 1890.
Well, college football was much more popular than the NFL until the 1950s. Yeah. And even then, it was still, up until the early 60s. So
what do they get in Oklahoma? What do they get, 100,000 people showing up?
It's still college football hasn't lost its popularity. It's just pro football past that, I think. I think that's going to change too. Anyway.
Interesting. Okay, so hey, let me go back to what I was before we went to the break. So, okay, Pence, right? He attends the game. I'm going back a few weeks when he attended the 49er Colt game, right? Now, they make a big deal of the fact that he had walked out during the kneeling process, right? But they make a bigger deal out of the fact that that it costs taxpayers $240,000 plus another $14,000 for the cops, the extra security. Well, whether he walked out or not, they still would have had that cost, right? But here's my point: unless there's specific business being talked about, like he's going to a game because he's going to a game, right? He's not going to Russia to talk to Putin about business or nuclear war, right? Should the taxpayers have to pay for a personal situation? I understand you got to protect.
You're talking about the vice president.
Yeah. And I understand. You got.
Right. In this divisive age we live in, unfortunately, we are more divided now than we've been since the Civil War.
That's why can't he pay for it himself? If you're going to.
Well, but how can he pay it himself? He's only getting his. Public servants are not paid. Believe it or not, they're not paid that highly. Even the president of the United States, I think, makes only $500,000 a year. That sounds like a lot of money, but it's not. Well, it used to be. I think it's up to about $500,000 now, but I don't.
Yeah, but Trump needs it though.
Oh yeah. No, but I hear your point. I just think it's I don't know. It's one of the many things that are kind of crazy about this guy. I'd rather have you talk about Jerry Jones because there's an interesting
okay.
And let's get Rich's take on Jerry Jones because I have my own thoughts about it.
Okay, so there's a story about Jerry Jones threatening to move the Cowboys to Canada.
I have to laugh. What do you think, Rich?
Now this is the first I'm hearing of this.
Yeah.
So I am flabbergasted because Jerry Jones, I've always thought was a total fraud. He's linking arms with the players.
Yeah.
So I'm one of the guys. Pseudo solidarity when he's the plantation owner of NFL owners is just the height of hypocrisy. And he's as phony as his facelift.
Well, and then the next week, wasn't it the very next week, he said, no more kneeling for anybody.
Yeah. Well, it's also interesting that he was the guy that really, one of the driving forces in the Raiders moving to Las Vegas. And isn't it? I think it's just.
Why was that?
Well, let's get off topic.
Okay, sure.
Jerry Jones, the guy who signed Ray Hardy to a contract last year, the man who was charged and convicted of horrific domestic violence, putting machine gun to the head of his girlfriend in the bathtub, threatening to kill her. But he found it okay because Greg Hardy was a heck of a pass rusher to give him a 1-year, $5 million contract.
And what do you have a problem with that for?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say he's always going to do what's good for Jerry Jones, and of course he's going to do what's good for the league if it helps him. This whole thing about suing the league because Ezekiel Elliott now has to serve for alleged domestic violence. That to me is the epitome of absurdity. And it's just another grandstanding move to get more attention. He's an attention whore.
He's just a very self-serving guy. Now, in one respect, you understand that there is a lot of hubbub over this seemingly arbitrary and all over the map measure of punishment handed out by Roger Goodell. But the Players Association authority is the recent CBA. So he is judge, jury, and executioner, if you will. And when he gives Ray Rice the 2-game suspension for almost killing his fiancée with a one-punch knockout in an elevator, then he bans Ray Rice indefinitely, and Ray Rice's career ended at the age of 28, despite his remorse and his girlfriend, now wife, contrition as well. So the disparity in the treatment of these cases all over the place, but that's the deal that the players made with the owners and Roger Goodell within the last collective bargaining.
But just think how much money Jerry Jones would save on the payroll by moving him to Canada. I mean, the payroll in Canada is really low.
$1 billion edifice, the Jerry Jones mausoleum down in stadium he built by the AT&T Stadium, which is this incredible mecca.
Rented out to Metallica or other bands.
By the way, when was the last time the Cowboys won the Super Bowl? That's been a few years. 1995. Yeah. And I know he's been, frustrated by that too. It's interesting. Jerry Jones is a fascinating character. If you take him away from football and you sit down and talk to the guy, he's actually quite charming and interesting. But I think when you're a public figure and you have that much money and you're, sort of the face of the franchise, your whole perspective gets a little skewed, don't you think, Rich?
Well, he's a narcissistic to the first degree. Look, he played college football in Arkansas, and I think with Barry Switzer, that was the kingship. Jerry Jones thinks he knows more about all that lifelong football guy. Coach, like the Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott, maybe the best rookies to come into the league in one team in recent memory. But I don't know how much credit Jones gets.
Yeah. Well, here's something funny too. Is that I guess there's kind of an issue between the Falcons owner and Jerry Jones, and so. The Falcons, you got to figure that, okay, since they didn't like each other very much, the Adrian Claiborne got a $750,000 bonus for reaching 8 sacks, which he probably would not have gotten, right? But I guess Jerry Jones going, you know what, I don't like that owner. I want to see him pay that $750,000. We're going to put some third stringer in there.
Oh, man. Well, it's just a different world. It's a different world, and I think unless you're privy to it and kind of involved on the side, as Rich was as a broadcaster, and I was to a lesser degree. I traveled a lot with teams, but I only worked on the sidelines for a couple of years. And you really sit down and talk to these guys and these owners. I got to know Al Davis, slightly over the years. They are just they're just in a different world. I mean, it's you're kind of in a chambered you're sort of a chambered nautilus. You're not to many of the things that are going on outside your world because you can't afford to. You have to be focused.
Was Jerry? Did he get his money from oil or real estate?
Yeah, how did Jerry Jones get so rich?
I don't know. I don't know that. But let's remember, most of these powerful owners, enormously wealthy, surround themselves with sycophants, and they hear all the glory to them, and it's almost like royalty. Look at most of the owners in the NFL, and they carry themselves like they are kings of the court. So is it any surprise that they are outraged by the player protest? It threatens their bottom line.
Yeah, no question.
They don't treat players, generally speaking, as members of the team. They are chattel. They are property.
Well, let's go back full circle. And then I know we're running out of time. We're talking with Rich Walcoff from KGO Radio, longtime sportscaster in the San Francisco Bay Area. They're over 30 years with station here doing sports. And Eddie DeBartolo started off very, very in a bad way because he tore the football team apart. In the first couple of years, it was a joke, but Walsh built up, as you mentioned earlier, a great organization. And Eddie actually treated his players pretty well, but he had a rough side too. And give us a little sort of a profile of your experience with Eddie DeBartolo and what you've learned.
Well, the very first time I met him in a interpersonal way was when I was driving to Candlestick Park in 1986 to deliver a $4.8 million check with the then head of KGO, Rich Walcoff, and that was because the broadcast rights for $6 million a year. Ended the check to Eddie D on the air live. They have to do in the Candlestick Park at a ceremony, and put his arm around me and said, "Kid, anything you need, I'll be there for you." Eddie, if you were on his side, he would do anything for you. And players swore by him because he would take care of them with higher salaries. I flew with the 49ers in the team charter for 3 years, 84, 5, and 6. We had a chef on board with the prime rib and the carbs in the aisle and the tasting dishes, and it was single, whereas most other teams make you bunk up with a teammate and the like. But if you cross Eddie, there was that dark side. I mean, Ronnie Lott was involved with a tough negotiation in 1990. He eventually got a 3-year, $1 million season contract. But when the 49ers stunningly lost that NFC Championship game, the final minutes when Roger Craig fumbled away the ball, the Giants won the to avoid 49ers three-peat. The Niners had 10 days to decide the plan B free agency, who they were going to protect and who they were not. And Ronnie Lott was left unprotected because he refused to take a 50% pay cut. Eddie was so enraged, emotionally, bent out of shape about that championship game loss. You're a halftime player, you're a part-time player, you get half the money. Ronnie said, heck with that. He left and went to the Raiders and left. Who led the NFL in 1991 black.
And guess who didn't make the playoffs in 1991? The 49ers. Yeah.
Hey, when you handed that check to Eddie and he said, anything you need, you should have said, can you endorse the check over to me? That's what I need.
Actually, when Nick and I were driving to Candlestick, I said, we could go to the airport in Brazil in about
I've never heard this story. That's a great story, Rich.
Hey, Rich, you know what? We got to cut to another break, and thank you again for being with us.
Great
stuff. Pleasure to have you on.
Appreciate
my
you.
pleasure, guys.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. What an interesting character. We only touched the surface with the stories. Yeah. Now, what about? I never heard it. I've known Rich for 30 years. Never heard that one about the presenting the check to Eddie. Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, $4 million back then. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Now it's just chump change.
Oh boy.
That's a weekend salary for you.
I wish.
I wish. Okay. Here's our third and final trivia question. Which quarterback set an NFL record by being the first to have 10 300-yard passing games in one season?
Okay.
And you will have heard of this quarterback.
Oh, I'm sure I will. I can't right off the top of my head think about it. Think about who he was, but I'll try.
You'll get it just by the question.
Yeah.
You will know the quarterback. Don't touch that dial. Sports Econ 101 will be right back with some closing comments. All right.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
And we were kind of all over the map, but we had a fun time with Rich. Rich is great.
That's all we care about is doing good radio.
Yeah. It's like that little job I got in the city, The most important thing is just every half hour, give them 2 minutes of news and a little fun,
Exactly. I mean, imagine you're the audience listening in.
Yeah.
That's
it's a different audience every half hour. So
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, every half hour is usually a different audience.
So when it's
mostly people in their cars.
Yeah.
Not always, but nighttime is the nice thing about working at night is I'm not during the drive time. You're not getting the big audience, but you're doing your updates right when everything's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's more to talk about there. Yeah, even last night there were 3 or 4 that were going on simultaneously. They were mostly back east, and by the time I came on, they were wrapping up. But it was fun. Yeah.
You gotta do something to housewives when you're out there going to listen probably at 10 a.m. or something.
And I'll leave that to Kim, who's filling in, Kim Foster for Kevin, and she has a nice touch. But I'm just not into all that gooey, sentimental stuff. When I'm doing a 2-minute update, people want just hard facts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What happened to Roz?
No, she went to ESPN.
She's great.
Yeah, she's terrific.
Oh,
yeah.
She's beautiful.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, Kareth is not bad, but
Roz is glamorous.
Yeah.
She is a Stanford grad. She's from New York. She's smart. She played basketball. She was not a great basketball player, but a very good basketball player.
How tall is she?
Not that tall. She's about 5'9".
Oh, okay.
She was. I think she was a guard.
That tall.
No, she's a little taller than the average woman. Kareth, I believe, played a little college ball, and she's good. But she's well. Unfortunately, again, television. It's all about how your presentation and. Roz, I have never seen her without just tons of makeup on. I don't know what she really looks like.
Yeah, but the thing that's kind of cool is you see different hairstyles.
Yeah, no, I like her. Don't get me wrong. I just find this whole glammed up thing to be the broadcasting industry. That's why I got into radio, because I worked in TV.
For the guys.
No, it's not just for the guys. It's for the women too. The women,
that's true. Women dress for other women.
Oh,
that is true.
Are you kidding me?
No, you're right.
But I worked in TV for 4 years, and I liked it. It was fun. And it was in a low key, small market, media market, Portland. I've done a lot of freelance work here in the city. I'm not a TV guy. I just am not.
True. Okay, but imagine you're watching the news, or weather, whatever, and it's like you don't really want to see unattractive. I mean, it's just hard to look at. I want to see someone who's easy on the eye.
No, I agree. I think that's one reason why you shouldn't depend on television for your news. I know most Americans do. And television is a headline service. Radio, to a lesser degree, is still a headline service. The newspapers, and unfortunately now the internet, but the internet is so, the short attention span is killing. This is what's causing problems in America. This is why we're so divisive. We don't want to have nuanced conversations. It's all about. It's not white and black. Never has been.
Just quick, give me the facts real fast.
Yeah. Everybody's in a hurry. Everybody's stressed out. Did you see the thing the other day? The American Medical Association or Surgeon General said that 30% or 50% of all Americans have blood pressure. It's 30 to 50%. That's close to the danger level.
Yeah,
that's not a surprise.
Yeah, they apparently they lowered that number. Like this is now the danger level.
Right, but I mean, considering traffic, considering the gun violence, considering what's going on in Korea, women's rights, police brutality, kids doing drugs, the opiate. I don't mean to sound negative, but all these things are just constantly in your face, and it's freaking people out.
Well, 69.27% of all statistical analysis are wrong.
That's just why you got to go surfing, clear your mind out. That's why I'm going to go for a walk. Life is short. But this nonsense anyway. You got to laugh about it. I do. That's why I love George Carlin so much. Football is like a battle. Baseball is like going to a picnic. Football, the object of the game is to drive into enemy territory, throwing, crackback blocks and down into the end zone for a touchdown. Baseball, the object is to go home and be safe at home. Oh, I'm safe at home. I love that. That was my favorite George Carlin routine ever, all time.
We are. If you can do that,
I'll save it for another time.
Okay, for when we have a longer.
It is. It's great. I'd love to play it for you because it's on YouTube.
I'm sure.
Go YouTube, baseball versus football. He's done it a number of times. Look it up. It's only about 3 or 4 minutes long. It's hysterical.
Okay, well.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Boy, we're having so much fun off air laughing.
See those folks, the few that are watching us there
on the YouTube channel.
YouTube channel can see it all. Yeah.
So it's George Carlin, baseball versus football.
Yeah, we'll talk about that sometime.
But at least people who hear this on the air right now can at least YouTube it.
Yeah.
All right.
YouTube George Carlin, baseball versus football. It's hysterical. The late great George Carlin, a few years ago, he was terrific for 15, 20, 30 years.
All right, here's our last trivia question. Which quarterback set an NFL record by being the first to have 10 300-yard passing games in one season?
Yeah, it's fairly recent. I'm going to say in the last 30 years. Dan Marino? No?
Rich Gannon. For the Raiders in
2002.
Right.
I should know. I covered that team. I traveled with that team. That's right. Boy, they had a team. That was it. Yeah, the problem was that Barrett Robbins, their center, went AWOL the night before the Super Bowl, and that just killed him. Whack. And John Gruden also had coached the Raiders for 4 years, so he knew everything Bill Callahan was going to do. And I think Tampa had 5 interceptions and 2 return for 2 or 3 return for touchdowns.
Don't you think the coach for the Raiders should have known?
Bill Callahan? Bill Callahan was a very good assistant, but not a good head coach.
Okay, here we go. Here's our thoughts for the day. The only thing that hurts harder than a failure is not trying.
Good
If you
point.
don't build your dream, someone else will hire you to help them build theirs.
I like that.
Ain't that the truth?
That's the truth.
That's why we all need to be self-employed.
And listen, I've been in broadcasting 43 years. About, I'd say 18 of those years, I've had to do freelance work. And it was rough, but I managed to make a living and had a good time doing it.
Pretty much your own hours. I mean, to some degree.
Yeah, but I went to a lot of games. That was what I wanted to do. I covered a lot of games. You know, I covered over almost 6,000 major league sports events,
I
college
want
games.
you to remember every single one of them.
Well, I can tell you about some great Super Bowls and World Series and NBA
Oh, sure.
championships. But no, that's a great thing to have the best seat in the house for those things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be discussing sports topics from a business perspective and asking more sports trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. We'll see you next week.
Good night, America.
So long.
All right.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Okay, so just for a double check.
Next week?
Yeah, let's see.
Oh, we got Thanksgiving. What? Not next? Is it next week or the week after?
Yeah, actually, it is next week.
It is
so
next week.
we are.
Wednesday?
Um,
Not gonna work for you.
yeah, actually, we can do Wednesday.
Good.
Oh, it's funny because I don't know. Okay, I haven't heard from the sports people if they'll have a problem with it.
Or something?
No. I'm just thinking that sometimes what happens is because of Thanksgiving, they usually want stuff earlier in the week because they don't work on Thursday or Friday.
Who wants stuff early?
Well, like
Oh.
I know that like Darren might want.
Oh, right. Gotcha.
Can we
Tuesday?
Tuesday?
Yeah, just
I'll send you a reminder.
Send me a reminder.
Oh,
I'll hustle up somebody. Edward, I'm not ashamed to say this, but I'm finally going to go, and I may do this a few times, go to see a shrink because what I've been going through.